Hey everybody, I'm Szczepanek. Welcome back to Pianist Academy. Good to see you. Welcome Antonio, Bedlington Groomer, Lori, Pianist 2011, Rob, C Drive, Restless Guitar, Gal. Hello everybody. We have a Chopin-filled day today. Hey, Julio. Good to see you again. Yeah, we have a Chopin-filled day today. Why don't we start by just in the chat. What works of Chopin have those of you here played? List a couple in the chat if you've played any. Or if you haven't played any, list maybe a couple of your favorites that you just know by recordings. Even then, maybe who's playing on the recording too. That'd be fun. Yeah. Well, it's good to see all of you. Lori, you say the Opus Posthumous Waltz and one or two of the preludes. Okay. Well, maybe today's prelude is going to be one of those favorites. Hey, Jess. Hi, Nancy. Well, we're happy to have you here while you can be here, Nancy. It's good. Yeah, great. Well, keep those pieces coming in the chat. We have two submissions today to listen to and to work on a bit, and Julio is up first. Welcome back, Julio. It's been a while since we've had you here. And Julio, you've been working on the Raindrop Prelude. How long? What drew you to the piece in the first place? These are gonna be a lot of questions, Julio. Why don't you start off by telling us how long have you worked on the piece? And hey, J2000 and Restless Guitar says the Prelude in C minor, great, and the A minor Waltz, favorites of Chopin, wonderful. And Julio, second question after you tell us how long you've been working on the Raindrop Prelude, is there two parts. What drew you to the piece in the first place? Was it a recording that you heard? Is it a specific part of it? Is it the key? Is it how it makes you feel? And secondly, do you have a favorite section of the piece? So as Julio writes that stuff down, we're going to listen to him play this for us. We're going to listen to the whole thing. All right? So here we go, Julio. Julio playing Chopin's Raindrop Prelude, Opus 28, number 15. All right, let's give Julio a round of applause. Thanks for sharing that. Very nice. Great work, Julio. We didn't hear from you. How long have you been working on the piece? So that would be, I think that would be nice for all of us to hear. Yes, yes. Good applause from everybody. And in the meantime, hello, Rhodesy, and hello, Bjorn, and hello, Catherine. Okay, great stuff. Julio, you especially, there were some moments in the piece where you brought out nicely some of the inner texture that we don't hear all that often. Some of the moving moving notes, not the repeated notes in the left hand, but where there's some moving counter melody. There were a couple of those that came out that were really nice. So that was cool, and nice job just listening for that and paying attention to it and then practicing it so you could bring it out. C Drive asks, is this considered an intermediate piece? And by the way, SLP, hello. And Gal says, very nice. Hey, hey. So C Drive, applause to Julio from Beth, awesome. C Drive, is it an intermediate piece? It's, there isn't anything that's incredibly technically difficult in the piece. There were a couple moments, and I'll probably bring them up in a bit, that they aren't fast and flighty and notey and virtuosic per se, but they require a tremendous amount of control. There's some inner voices that need to come out within the right hand at one point. That's very difficult. And interpreting the piece and keeping it balanced, I think, is very difficult. So the answer is mixed. Rhodesy, you said just musically difficult in this piece? Yeah, we'll see. You know, it's the same thing that makes the fourth prelude so difficult. All of the repeated chords. People play this so early in their journey at the piano. But playing those whisper quiet and playing them where none of the notes poke out and playing them where all of the fingers strike together, that's really difficult. We have similar in this piece because the left hand has these repeated with the fifth finger. Now, if you play them, and Julio, we're going to come back to working on this in a second, but if you play all those fifth fingers by playing, well then, no. It's not very difficult because it's easy to play 5 over and over again when the dynamic is comfortable. But when we have to hold certain pitches down, and 5 needs to be audible, and every note needs to speak, and every note needs to be precisely placed at the probably softest dynamic you can possibly play. That requires a really highly developed technique to do that. So the answer is kind of similar to how when we talk about the Moonlight Sonata, first movement by Beethoven. Yeah? It's generally considered easy to play, but it's not really. Even technically. It's especially not easy musically, but even technically to articulate everything at a really high level and with a lot of control it takes a lot of development. So I would call the piece advanced, not intermediate. I don't know what grade level it actually belongs to, but I would put it somewhere like RCM 9, 10, somewhere in there. Yeah, which would be about ABRSM 7, 8. Julio, we heard back from you. And Z Spark, welcome. Julio, you say you started working on this piece in 2023, but you haven't focused on it. Or you didn't focus on it when you first started it. You have a lot of backlogs. Well, that's good. You're learning a lot of other pieces, and you only started to focus on it now. Well, great. Thanks for sharing that, Julio. Okay. Where should we begin? Julio, let's start with the first page. There's no place to start like the top, right? Oh, here we go. Okay. So when we're beginning the piece, Julio, a lot of your performance everything was very soft. And that's gonna be a recurring theme as we talk today about this. But you could feel like just about everything could be brought up a couple notches in dynamic. So that we give ourselves room to make a phrase, to make more of a phrase. It seemed like you were trying to play everything as soft as you could. And you did a pretty good job of keeping the right hand balanced above, the melody mostly balanced above the texture. That was pretty good. But everything just felt like it was so soft, like if you were here in the room with me, you could whisper over this. And it all kind of sounded like it was here. Right? In order to show a phrase, and we have such a long phrase through the first 4 bars into the downbeat of the 5th, in order to really show that phrase and show that it has an arc and it goes somewhere, we can allow ourselves to sink in a little bit more and play out a little bit more. For example, now, when I got to that end there, before the ornament, right, I had room so that I could taper the sound, right? Because I reached a point here. Oh, and then we have dynamic left over that we can show the end of the phrase. But if everything starts so quietly, like it's a whisper quiet, then we have to be so careful about how far we go. We can't go too far, because if we go, well, then it sounds out of place because it doesn't fit the phrase. But likewise, when we get to the end of a statement and you're already playing here, we don't have anywhere left to go to show a decrease in dynamic and to show the end. Right? And we have phrase after phrase after phrase to do this. And every phrase is going to get a different level of importance. There's going to be a different hierarchy of intensity of the phrase. Right? So my first encouragement to you is just try to play everything out a little bit more. That also will make it a little bit easier because we're giving room, right? We're creating room dynamically. It'll make it a little bit easier to count on left hand fifth finger to be there. Even though we're trying to play that one, of all of the stuff I just mentioned, it's left hand five. Shouldn't come up very much at all. Yeah? So by bringing out the melody a little bit more, bring out the bass so that we hear that D flat rings through across the pedal. And then those A flats stay nice and tucked away. So we have tiers of dynamics, right? And then don't be afraid when you get to a point where you want to show more shape. Show more shape. It can go further. Yeah? Okay, good. That could be the whole, across the whole piece, Julio. So let's see, you say you kind of noticed that you were maybe being too careful with dynamics because you thought you were too loud. Even though the outer sections of this piece are very delicate, I guess this is another thing that makes the piece difficult. There's a fine line between projecting too much and increasing the dynamic too much, and then starting to become harsh. So we want to approach that point, but we never want to cross over and play. That's not good. That doesn't fit the character, it doesn't fit the piece, it doesn't fit the marking of piano on the score. But this doesn't fit it either. Right? So we have to try to develop enough control over the melody, and we're going to actually talk about a little technique next that perhaps could help you with this. We want enough control over that melody that we can sink in and play. And that's piano bordering on maybe mezzo piano in the top. And then we probably crescendo to mezzo forte. And we can come back. Right? So we want to start to approach that point where is it turning the corner? Because we don't want the melody to be buried. And we want to give ourselves that space in order to show shape and to show phrase and to show intensity. Okay. Let's talk about, I mentioned a little bit of a technique thing that might help you with this. Through a lot of the piece, Julio, both of your hands are very static. They seemed a little stuck. And even sometimes when they weren't stuck, where might we have a place like this? Sometimes when the left hand needed to move, so I would sometimes see your left hand be playing, and when we have a bigger jump, we would kind of shift and hover and pause and play and keep going. And the tempo that you took, it's a little slow, and that could accommodate it right now. And not just with the left hand, but that happened with both hands. And that shifting, you're being very careful and you're trying to play the right notes, and I appreciate that. But we want to develop more looseness in the mechanism and more freedom of movement. Why don't we do this with the melody instead of the left hand? So when we start, try to let your wrist and your arm still sing the line. Be a part of, even after the note has sounded, let your body be a part of the note that's continuing, even though it's held with the pedal. So if you watch me play that, never was I just playing a note, for example, and then going to here and staying just right there, right? Or on the high note, the high point of the phrase, not going there and staying, but letting the arm continue. That does two things for us. When we begin playing a note from movement, right? When we're already in motion as we approach playing the note, which is why even the first note of the piece, before the music has started, we approach. And if you see, every time I've started the piece, there's always a preparation off the keys. Because that first note, I can so much more easily find the dynamic and find the color if I begin from motion, rather than being prepared and set and then trying to play. It's possible, but man, that's a lot harder to do that. So every note that we approach via movement is actually easier to play, and it's easier to find the control because we're not trying to start every note over again. We're not restarting. If you think of, like, our body is like a machine, right? And we don't want to have to restart the machine every time we have a new note to play. So that's one thing. The second thing is when you feel free, even if you're creating finger legato and you're holding and finger substitution, there's still things you can do here to show the line. And when you're actively engaged in feeling that line somehow, not just hearing it's the first step, but when we play and we're feeling it so deeply and we're feeling where it's going so deeply that I can't even help but show movement in there. It would feel wrong to go, because that makes it feel to me like it's the end. I just got somewhere and I'm sitting there and that's it. Like, the piece is going to be over on this. Yeah, like that, right? But if I'm hearing the movement of the phrase with my inner ear, let's say, and then I show that movement via a gesture with the body, just keeping us free, we stay so much more actively engaged in that creation of music and in the creation of line. So there's a technical benefit and there's a musical benefit, and they go hand in hand. And one happens after the note, right? And then the other happens before the pitch. Ricardo says, you're wondering how hand separate work he's doing. Julio, he brings up a good point. Have you worked on just shaping the melody without all of the busy stuff in the left hand? When we have a melody like this, and there are places where there are pauses for, well, they're not pauses, but there are notes that have a long duration. We play an instrument that does not help us with that, right? Because as soon as we play, the sound is dissipating. Yet we need to stay connected. We need to show that that's not the end of the phrase. It's still going somewhere. If you were a vocalist or if you were a string player, you would crescendo through this note to the next and to the next and all the way. And you could do that if your bow was attached to the string. You could crescendo it, right? So, Julio, yeah, I think take a little time and do what Ricardo suggests. Work on the melody alone, not just at the beginning, but across the piece. And listen for your phrase. And practice this feeling connection to the phrase with the body as well. Yeah? Okay. Good. Good. Let's talk about some of the ornaments that we had. So little things that end some of these phrases. Here in measure 4. Oh, by the way, Julio, every time you get to this point when you were playing, we kind of skipped through that rhythm. and it was in both hands. So watch out for points like that. I've circled it here. But anytime this part of the phrase comes back, yeah, we didn't stay present. Good. Now, next up, that little ornament. Okay, could somebody here tell me what are ornaments about in Chopin? How are they maybe different than ornaments from the Baroque period? I don't mean the notes themselves. I mean the compositional intent. Does anybody know that? Oh, yes, phase. Ricardo says they're like jazz. Well, Ricardo, what do you mean by that? Can you expand on that a little bit? As opposed to like, yeah, what would Baroque ornaments be? Rhodesy just says, wouldn't be a Chopin melody without ornaments. Okay. They're very individual. He had a very unique way of writing them, and they are present quite often. What else, though? If maybe think about how you've heard pianists play ornaments in jazz, in Baroque music, not in jazz. Ornaments in Baroque music and ornaments in trills, like trills and turns in Mozart. And how are they different from this? Ricardo says they're mini codas. Yeah, that's great. And how is a coda different from a Mozartian ornament? Laurie says, in Baroque, they were more improvisatory in nature. Technically, I guess, yes. Baroque ornaments were... I don't want to give the answer away too much until we've had a few more. Yes, if you, even today, if you know kind of the rules of how to play in the Baroque style, you can ornament all over the place where there aren't any printed in the score. Baroque composers would have expected that. Faye said they go up. Okay, they are, yes, okay, they've changed directions, yeah. MS, hey, you say Baroque ornaments emphasize structural harmonic tension starting on the beat, true, and romantic ornaments serve as a lyrical expressive melody. They're generally played ahead of the beats. Yes, in this case, it's not ahead of the beat, but a lot of that is, yeah, you're spot on. Right, so if we look at this one, this ornament, this group of 7 occupies one beat in its entirety. Yeah. Restless guitar and Baroque ornaments are optional. To a point, sure. They aren't, let's say, necessary to play the music. Yeah. Laurie, it was up to the player where they put ornaments or not. That is partially true. Yep. SLP says the ornaments in Chopin lead somewhere with the melody and are a part of the melody. Good. Starting to get some more thought here. Great. Oh, Peaky Blinders. If you can hold that question, I will try to come back. But we've got a lot of stuff to cover today with 2 Chopin pieces. So I'll try to come back. Bedlington Groomer. Was it to fill in where there was no possibility of sustain? And in the Baroque period. You're onto a little bit of something there, Bedlington Groomer. Sometimes ornaments could be used to, let's say, accent or mark or bring out a particular part of a phrase or a particular note. So it wasn't quasi-sustain, because if we bring something out of the texture more by adding notes and a little decorative frill around it, it draws the ear there. Yeah. Okay. The closest that we've gotten, let's see, Rhodesy said most ornaments aren't showing off, but variations. Well, Rhodesy, that's true in Chopin. Not in the Baroque style, right? Good. And let's go back to MS 2606, who said Baroque ornaments emphasize structural harmonic tension. So yes, and they show emphasis like we just talked about. Romantic ornaments, especially when, oh, I lost my iPad feed. Especially when Chopin writes them out fully. There are occasions where Chopin uses a symbol for an ornament, but often he writes the ornament out in full. And this is one such example. When he writes all of the notes out completely, he's actually telling us this is really important. It's not a little decorative thing that we just throw away. Right? If you heard something like that, a turn like that in Mozart, it would be... Of course, the tempo would have to be faster too, right? But in Chopin, and this melody is ornamented at the end of the phrase often and in slightly different ways. It's to show great emphasis and importance on each and every pitch. So that's why often when you hear recordings of this piece and other pieces by Chopin, when ornaments are printed out like this by Chopin, we generally take more time. We play with more rubato and we add almost like adding tenutos to some of the pitches to show this isn't just a little, oh, here's the end of the phrase. Woohoo! It's not a gesture like that. And by the way, Julio, you didn't play it like that. But Julio, you also didn't play it showing us that there's very, very, very deep meaning in that beat. Perhaps second only to the high point of the phrase. And relaxes. So how much more meaning, Julio, can you give each of the ornaments? And how much less in time can we play them, right? Chopin should never be played. You should never try to count the polyrhythms like and try to line it up. It's not supposed to be that. It's supposed to be a vocally inflected gesture of emotion. Yeah. So, Julio, as you go across the piece, even when we have, we've got some kind of triple appoggiaturas here. Even there, that's a written out ornament, right? And we want to refrain from playing that. That sounds almost Baroque, definitely like Mozart. And we have a similar ornament. Oh, by the way, I'm just down on the first page here. Right? Don't do that. But there's more time. Same thing here, but done in a different way. Yeah. Okay, so Julio, does that all make sense? If you go back to what Ricardo said earlier again, Ricardo called all of these ornaments kind of like mini codas. And that's great. If you think about it that way, a coda is unmetered usually, often unmetered. You're given freedom. And don't think about it as like a coda to show off, but it's a coda to take time and make something extra special out of that moment. Yeah. Okay. So far, so good. Julio, let us know if you've got any questions. But thanks to everybody for chiming in about Baroque versus Chopin ornaments. That was good stuff. In general, try to remember, Baroque ornamentation is about creating a point of interest and a kind of an accent, and it's think of Baroque architecture and think of Baroque style and think of how florid it is and how ornate, and think of that, and then compare that to the ultra deep emotion, often introspective emotion of ornaments in Chopin. They're very different. They're not meant to be like grab your attention and hey, look at this note, and oh, isn't this really cool? It's more of a statement of whatever we're already feeling about the phrase, it just got so much deeper. Okay? Okay, let's go to maybe just one or two more things, and we'll wrap this up. In the middle section, Julio, do you know the story behind the piece? How much of the history do you know? And what scene kind of has been attributed, especially to this section? Let's think about that a little bit. But first off, even though measure 28 says sotto voce, and I believe, go back to it's not marked at the beginning. Okay. I thought perhaps it was in bar 1. When we finish playing the opening theme, let's see, measure 26 and 27. How much bigger of a difference, this goes back to the very first thing we talked about, how much bigger of a difference can you make in the color and even potentially in the dynamic between those sections? If we are going to give ourselves a place to drop further in 28, we have to have allowed it earlier in the piece. Right? Rhodesy, you said you love the rumor that Chopin heard the ghosts of monks chanting in the monastery. Yep. Yeah, that's a pretty cool one. We'll never know for sure. But it sure fits. We also know Chopin was extremely ill. And he wrote this likely while he had a very, very high fever, maybe slightly delirious. So this is dark, swirling in a way, even though it's steady and pulsing. And we think of this, that's right, MS-26, yeah. We think of this repeated notes, they're kind of like, perhaps they are the raindrops, because apparently he wrote this during a storm, raindrops falling on the rooftop of the monastery where he was staying because nobody would take him in because So So perhaps those are the raindrops, maybe. And they've been consistent across the piece. But this is so dark and ominous. Julio, I'd like to hear you make more of a complete phrase with these left-hand ideas. Part of that is going to mean the tempo has to come up just a little bit. But if they are monks chanting, where's the breath? Be aware of where breath is. Be aware of the shape and how it feels vocally for us, and let that influence the shape of the phrase that you make. Sorry about the pause in there. Yes, so Julio, I think you got that right. The pulsating notes are a metaphor for raindrops, a reference to the place where the rooftops were leaking. Yes. Good. Okay. So Julio, you said you're working on the crescendos. Don't just create a crescendo. Create more shape. Listen, every bar. And it starts again. There's almost like two voices duetting here. The bottom and and then together. And each of those voices, even though they're written as one and the stems aren't in opposite directions, we have opportunities to shape them in every single bar. So you can do more with that, Julio. Then when we get to 35, it's marked crescendo, but look at how long the crescendo needs to take. 35, 36, 37, 38, and 39. We have to crescendo across 5 bars. So we need to balance that crescendo a little bit more. When you played this, we immediately got more from the octaves that began. We need to sneak those in. Yeah. So. Yeah. Rhodesy, I like that too. You said pulsating, maybe like a heartbeat. I think that's also great. Yeah. Okay, so Julio, take more time to make that crescendo. More gradual. That's what I wrote in the score. Don't give us a bigger and new dynamic in the middle of 35 where the octaves start. They need to be still just as quiet as your single G sharps were in the whole introduction of this theme. Yeah? So be careful there. Now, we've come to one of the spots that's very difficult to actually phrase. It requires quite a lot of advanced technique, and that's bringing out the inner notes in the right hand. Right? Most often you're going to hear... But when we try to bring the note out, just everything in the right hand, or especially 5 pops out, because we're used to practicing phrasing for the top, bringing 5th finger out. If we're going to bring out anything in the right hand, it's probably going to be the 5th finger. Yeah? Julio, do you remember? We've talked about in streams here, and it's been a while since you've been here, but we've talked a bunch about... ways to practice bringing an inner voice like that out. Yeah. So Julio, do you remember some of the techniques that we have talked about in the streams of how to go about practicing bringing it out? Bjorn, go ahead and ask if it's related to the piece. SLP sounds like a funeral march. It does. Yes. And perhaps there was some foreshadowing. Yep. Okay. Next up, speaking of, I said this was going to be a recurring theme, Julio, and we started the beginning talking about allowing for a more dynamic separation. When we arrive to measure 40, this should be absolutely an enormous dynamic. Don't hold anything back. Yeah? So if we get into that. How big of an explosion can we make there? I mean, this is really, it's almost like a cry for help. So it can be extraordinarily big and emotional and screaming, reaching. And then it calms back down. The bigger we can make that contrast, the more effective the outer parts, this chant, the more effective they are. Right? Because it all happens again. Oh, Julio, should you sing the piece while you play it? Yes. And you should sing the piece even while you're not playing it. And you should sing the melody while you just play the left hand. So your question is yes, and fill in the blank. Singing while we play is so important. And a great deal of, even though Chopin's melodies aren't, you can't really sing them, even they're just so long that it's not quite possible to sing them. They're extremely, extremely influenced by vocal writing. Chopin was a lover of opera. He really loved what the voice could do. And so despite the phrases on the piano being longer than a vocalist could sustain, they are still greatly influenced by what the human voice does and can do. So if we can sing them, even if we have to put breaths in where they don't belong in the phrase, just to be able to keep it going and to feel that connection to the music, absolutely do that. And yep, Rhodesy, Chopin would have definitely known the dies irae. Yeah. SLP said sobbing. Mm-hmm. Wailing, was that I don't know if we had wailing, if anybody said that earlier, but I definitely think of that here through all of those. Oh, and a little technical thing, Julio. When you're playing these big octaves, don't feel like you need to, again, be stuck and set in the keys. But let them ring, especially left hand. Yeah. Just to point out, and this will be the last thing we talk about. Julio, I think I've given you plenty to work on. But I just want to point out what I think is the biggest technical challenge in the piece. And it's not very obvious. But in 64, so the bottom line, look at where the moving line is again. Right, earlier Chopin gave us a single note in between octaves to bring out. That's relatively easy compared to what happens in 64, 5, 6, and 7. What happens here? That melody line, the duetting voice, is in the middle. And there's two pitches now. And doing that while you continue to play the G sharp above. And phrase it. That's incredibly difficult. And you only get one line. It's you only get one line to show that. So that single line makes the piece, I think, an advanced piece, because otherwise all that's going to happen is just here G sharp, and everything's just kind of phrased all the same because everything is stretched there. The hand's always playing an octave, so we don't even get like a release of the hand in order to reset, to realign, to be able to bring out a different note in a certain way. You just have to have the finger control. Hey, Bjorn, I actually compared that. Rhodesy said to them it seems more similar to the A minor prelude, but Bjorn, I actually compared this to the E minor number 4 right when we started today. Yep. Because of the repetition of the accompaniment especially. And also you could say the length of the melodic sustain. They're similar in that way. Julio say, does the section where that climax happens after the crescendi, does it have to be strictly fortissimo or is forte okay? So Julio, I'm going to encourage you to play much bigger because I don't want to say forte is okay and then always have it kind of buried. I want you to reach for something that feels way bigger and more powerful than you're used to it being, because we have to explore that space. That's our opportunity to show the very large juxtaposition of emotion. And if it's too close in dynamic to what has come prior, it doesn't have the impact. Yeah? So I think it should be, I'll give you 2 answers, okay? If you were already playing fortissimo, and you asked that question, I'd say maybe. Maybe thinking forte is okay. Because it should still have some sense of warmth. And Chopin fortissimos historically are not as big as from some other composers. Although you're not going to hear a lot of people play it that way. They're going to really let loose. However, that's if you're coming from the other side. If you're coming from already playing fortissimo and it's already super powerful, we might turn it back from 11 to 10 just to say, let's just loosen up a little bit so that we feel a little more drop and we feel a little more warmth and we feel a little more connection to singing and ringing rather than punching. Yeah? But we're coming from the opposite place, Julio. We're coming from, I would say you did not reach forte. You reached mezzo, piano, mezzo, forte at most. So you need to go a lot further. Okay, so go a lot further first. Send us another recording. And we can go from there. Yeah, Julio, you said, guess one of the most important things is to play with more feeling. Yeah, it seems, Julio, like you have an idea of what the piece, some historical context for it. And you understand the phrasing. You understand where the melody is going. I would try to give yourself a little... You probably already have some ideas of what you want to feel as you play the piece. Magnify them 100-fold and allow those feelings to come out through what we talked about at the beginning, through more freedom of gesture as you play and not being so glued to the keys. Okay? Hey, why don't we give Julio another round of applause? Thanks for sharing this, Julio. It's such wonderful music. You're doing a great job learning it, working on it, and I'm glad that you are bringing it back after a long hiatus with the piece. And we'd love to hear you play it again in a month or two when you feel like you've incorporated some of the stuff we talked about. Yeah. Hey, quick aside, because Julio played on digital, and I know many of you do as well. It can be really easy for, not in a good way, it can be really easy for dynamics to get compressed on a digital piano, especially when you keep the volume turned down. Because when the volume's really low, if we're truly playing piano, it won't be audible. Yeah, so just be really aware of that. When you're playing an acoustic instrument, and that's what we're always trying to model, when you play forte and fortissimo, it is really loud. I've measured the decibels at the piano on the bench, and fortissimo or triple forte, fortissimo, I hit over 100 decibels. Here, just sitting here, acoustically, and I don't have a concert grant. It's only a 6.5 footer, so it's even more the bigger the piano you have. And then again, that contrast when you drop to pianissimo is like 60 decibels. That's a massive difference. Okay? Like a rock concert is 105 to 110 decibels usually. So to hit 100 playing forte without amplification, that's really loud. And then to drop all the way to 60, I think, if I remember correctly, a library where no one is talking is about 45 decibels. So when I say, and I play some things, and I say, this is whisper quiet. If I whispered here in the room, my whisper would be louder than the piano is. That's absolutely true. That's how big the contrast is. So one you cannot even talk over, forte, fortissimo. One you can whisper over. And we have everything in between. So especially if you're playing on a digital, a lot of times the contrast that we have access to on an acoustic instrument gets obscured because of the volume knob. So be careful of that. Do some practicing with headphones if you're worried about other people. And you know what? I don't want to give permission to have anybody have hearing loss or something. But you can probably have your fortes louder than you do if you're practicing on a digital. Yeah. We'll leave it there. Okay. Rhodesy says, get some earplugs in case. That's probably not going to happen with the piano. I mean, we don't have a lot of repertoire where we're playing that loudly for that length of a period of time. The ears have no problem. I mean, gosh, I spent years and years and years of my life in little practice rooms playing grand pianos in rooms that barely fit them and pounding away playing forte and fortissimo on passages. I don't have any hearing loss because the attack of those notes is just a brief moment in time, and the decay acoustically happens so fast. That's why a lot of pianists don't have problems like that. Unlike people in the orchestra, who sit the row in front of the trumpet players, man, they get an earful of 110, 120 sustained decibels coming out of the bell of the instrument. That's right there. That's way different. Okay. Bjorn, that's, great. Bjorn says, keep going, and your performance is lovely, Julio. Awesome. Yeah. Rhodesy, you're up. Rhodesy is going to play some of the first Ballade for us. And let's see, it's on my score, I think it's about the first 2 pages. And then Rhodesy, you do a little improv as you finish because you haven't finished learning the notes. We haven't gone past that point yet. So we're going to take a listen to Rhodesy playing the beginning of Chopin's first Ballade. Let me get that queued up, and we'll take a listen. Okay, here we go. Fun stuff, Rhodesy. Let's give Rhodesy a round of applause. Okay. You know, there are some interesting things you did in your improv there where you referenced a number of spots throughout the piece. You know, improving around ideas in the repertoire we're playing, I'm always in favor of that. We can learn things about the repertoire more deeply that way than if we are only reading the notes off the page. So, yeah, fun stuff, Rhodesy. Okay. Well, let's start with just some note stuff first. Rhodesy. Oh, you say you couldn't pull that off in a concert hall? Well, depends on your audience. And it depends on how well it's put together, Rhodesy. Okay, this bar 33, Rhodesy, I know you love stuff like this. Learn all of the notes. You skipped close to half of them. From here We didn't get all of those changes in direction through this phrase, and that's really important. Yeah? So actually learn all the notes there. Okay. It's a really fun measure to play, and it's not that hard, not compared to what's coming up. So take a little time and do that. Let's go back to the top. Rhodesy, what color? You say you know those notes. Okay. Well, good. I'm glad to hear that. Rhodesy, what kind of tone and color do you want on the very first note of the piece? The first C that kicks this whole journey off. Have you thought about what is it exactly that you're trying to intone there or show us? Julio, it was probably in that movie, The Pianist. There was a lot of great repertoire in The Pianist. The restless guitar, you say you improvise on errors? That's actually a great thing. Quick departure from this piece. Improvising on errors is awesome, and it's such a great skill to have if you're going to perform in front of people, where you just want to be able to kind of, if something goes wrong, you're not afraid of doing something musically that's going to get you back on track. That's such a great skill, so keep doing it. It's very helpful. Yeah. Ricardo says, yes, Julio, it is in the movie. Thanks, Ricardo. Zero, I'll see if I can get to your question after we finish this segment, okay? So, Rhodesy, you said you're thinking of something warm and grand that leads to melancholic. Okay, great. If you're really wanting to channel that, Rhodesy, I like that idea. The way you approach the first pitch can tell us much more of that. When you played it for us just now, it just seemed like it was kind of flippant, like, oh, here are just some notes before we get to the main piece. And the way you presented it when you sat down, and you didn't prepare anything before the first note, really. You sat down and you jumped in. So there wasn't a sense of poise about the first pitch. And then secondly, how you attacked it was just you didn't do anything to make me feel like this is supposed to be warm, or to make me feel like this is the beginning of something really, really special. So think about, before you begin the piece, give yourself a moment and breathe, because you're about to go on a life-changing journey. And you're not going to just step out the door. When you know this is going to be life-changing, you don't just step out the door merrily and say, woohoo, here we go. It's like, we're off to see the wizard. And, oh, this is going to be longer than we thought it was going to be. Right? No. There is, there's quite a lot of emotion, pent-up emotion, from apprehension, sadness, anxiety, joy. All of that stuff is built into the very first pitch. And if you approach the first pitch like that, what you're able to do with the rest of that phrase turns into something much deeper, because you've already plugged into the depth of just the first octave. And as soon as you have something more than that, wow, it's just like the world of music unlocks for you. MS, you say it's like the once upon a time of a story. That's absolutely true. Yeah. So, Rhodesy, I like your intention. What you said there, warm leading to melancholic, across the introduction. Yes. Show us more of that. Give us more of that warmth on the first pitch, but also show us, can you embody the depth of the journey you're about to take, because you know the whole piece. I mean, we know it too. We know where we're going to end up, 10 minutes from now. But pretend that we don't. And can you channel everything that we're going to go through together as you play it? But can you all of that in just the very first octave? And if it helps, write down a list of like, what are some of the feelings that we traverse and as a part of our journey? Write them down so that you've got a list and you've got at least 4, 5, 6 that you're thinking about and feeling as you play the first pitch, because we want that to set up what's coming. Otherwise, it feels like we kind of get to the main part of the story, and then it also has a little less meaning. Yeah? Okay. Yeah, yes, Rhodesy, you're retelling a deep story. Yeah. This isn't a campfire story. This is like you're writing your memoir. You're writing, or you're giving us a glimpse into like one of the most painful experiences you've ever gone through, and the highs and lows of the journey of that experience. Yeah. Zero said it's a walk with like a cocktail of emotions. Okay, so fairly, Rhodesy, you said you did record that in a rush. Okay. Just take your time. Be present for the first note. Let's get into the crux of things. Rhodesy, have you ever just sat and listened to that chord that we get to? How unlike Chopin is that chord? Doesn't even resolve yet. It's delayed. The resolution's delayed 2 bars, but this is so dissonant. Rhodesy, since you like to do improv, I would play around with that harmony and going in and out of it. Can you go from C to... Usually we think of like the dominant is the most tension in a phrase, right? And the dominant here is D7. That feels like nothing compared to the previous chord. So Rhodesy, you say, it's so dissonant, even today your teacher was talking about it for 10 minutes. Yeah, good. Sounds like you've got a good teacher. Live with it. How does the dissonance change depending on which note of the roll you bring out? Do you bring out that one the most? Do you bring out the E flat? And then how long do you actually hold it? It's not written to have a fermata, but I don't think anybody really counts that. Okay, let's go on. Something else really important right at the end of this bar. What's that? A rest. Take time for that too. So we've heard the dissonance. It dissipates, but not to resolution. Just to that singular ping of pain. And it's still there. Yeah. And then we let the pain resolve as the main motif enters. Let's see, you say, you think of it like a cloud of smoke, that dissipates. Maybe I would just change that slightly. Instead of a cloud of smoke, I like the cloud idea because we can dissipate the cloud. But it needs to have something that's more, it's got more of an edge on it, I think. It's not just a cloud, because if we play it like a cloud, then we get... right? And we lose the kind of the piercing quality, especially of the B flat in the melody. Yeah. So maybe if there's a way to modify that visual for you just a little bit so that it's not all, what's the word? It can't just be blown away. It's deeper than that. Yep. Okay. Rhodesy, throughout here, Rhodesy, you said you're using Schirmer. Get a good edition, Rhodesy. you know these things. This is Paderewski. Get the Paderewski or get an Ekier edition. Don't trust Schirmer for Chopin, especially. Yeah. Okay. So, Rhodesy, watch out for your pedals throughout this whole section where the theme is here. Show the rests. And look at where Chopin's given us all sorts of markings about finger sustain. Yeah, there are so many here. Even right in the first measure. Let's look at that one first. Look at the difference in stem direction. Those he specifically wrote to sustain those with 1, 2, and 3. That's why we have to play the upper notes of the melody with 5, 5. Now, Rhodesy, I don't remember in your video if you actually did sustain these every time they come through, right? But we want to hear those so that when we let the pedal go, we can still hear the harmony underneath. So it's clean, but still harmonized. And let's jump down to this other one, the one I had just finished playing. Look at the E flat and the A natural. We're supposed to take a new pedal, but those need to continue to ring. Yeah? Good. So keep your fingers engaged while you're doing that. So we're still in, and if you don't pedal, yeah? Okay. So that we still hear those. Okay, good. Okay, Rhodesy, you've had some good thoughts about where the phrases are going in the piece. When we get to this theme, what is this theme to you, and what is the story that you're trying to tell here? And in fact, everybody, Rhodesy is experiencing the piece deeply because of learning it, but those of you who know the piece or you're listening to it, what is the story that you're hearing? You say, Rhodesy, you say, this is not happy. Reminds you of some past memories. Okay, not happy. What about something deeper? other than not happy? Can we go deeper? Anybody? Help Rhodesy fill in some. Great. 0. Depression, sadness. Good. You know, these last 2 pieces they've been so deep today. Usually I smile a lot more in these streams, but at least when I'm experiencing the music, I can't, it's very hard to pull yourself out of what the feeling is. And so I feel like I'm frowning quite a lot. Mm-hmm. Jess, you said contemplative, maybe? Contemplative but not in a calm way. Mm-hmm. What else? Rhodesy, you too. Keep on digging here. 0 says, it feels like you've lost something that'll never come back. That's great. Yeah. Yeah, I really like that one. Uncertainty. Rhodesy says, pondering a deep thought. Good. Yeah. So Rhodesy, you're like laying the foundation for where this needs to go. And if you want to, use some of the ideas, like especially the ones that 0 wrote in, but some of the other ones too. SLP, I just see here. I saw he wrote juicy chord about this one. That's great. Yeah. Uh-huh. MS2606, you say it's got a waltz-like sad rhythm. Mm-hmm. Sourful. The upcoming story is very sad. Maybe because it feels like a waltz, is it sorrow about a past romance? Is it something like that? 0 says, but it makes you mad too, like sadness, madness, and a bit of joy all together. Man, that sounds like lost love to me. Okay, so Rhodesy, take your foundation and go a little bit deeper, right? So think about, well, what are these other feelings? What are they, and how do they make us feel? What facial expression do they put on us? How do we feel about the phrase? And this isn't just something we're gonna go. Yeah, that's too late, right? Yeah, Rhodesy, yes, it needs a big emotional foundation. Most music does, Rhodesy. Yeah, so how deep can you go there? And listen to the end of that phrase. We just get... The phrase is, it shouldn't end there, but it does. And then we get something that's a little more final, and then not. What if we go this other direction? Sorry, that was a little bit too big. And then where we retell this, how does it change? Yeah, 0 says hope comes out. Yeah. Yeah, Rhodesy, I think, well, either you said you think you would play it better in a sadder point of your life. You know, we can't rely on any of the music that we play we can't rely on being in that space. We probably shouldn't. A lot of the classical repertoire is very depressing. A lot of the masterpieces are very down. They're dark emotionally. And we shouldn't need to be there in order to play the music. But it does help if you can draw on an experience of how you have felt when you've lived through something like that. So Rhodesy, look into your past, and can you remember some of those? Can you remember some of those feelings? Just a couple phrase housekeeping things for you. Be sure when you get to the end of a statement that you are shaping the phrase and you're rounding it. A lot of times we did the opposite, and you'd get to the end of a phrase and go, and it would pop out of the texture. It happened there. This is measure 12, where the F sharp got kind of accented, and then it would happen again. It happened here in 16. There's a bigger accent put on that C natural. Make sure that you're really listening and connected to the shape of the entire phrase so that you hear that's full of tension. That's our resolution. And then what's this? Because we're not actually feeling resolved about this situation or whatever it is, right? It leads us back to why Chopin restates the theme for a third time. That's also really uncommon, right? Usually we get something stated twice. Here, if we go back to the top, this is first time. Okay, it's a glimmer of a thought. And then we get it again. And it's different. Okay. That sounds somewhat hopeful. But then it comes back again. And it changes. And it leads us right back to the beginning. But not. Because quickly, we're going to go somewhere else. So watch your phrases. Think about why we have all of these repeats of that eighth note motif. And then, Rhodesy, don't break these octaves in the left hand. It's really distracting the shape that we're trying to make in the melody, which is it's an extended sigh. There is some interest in that line for sure, but if we break the octaves, which is what you did, that draws a lot of attention down there and away from what's really the most important, which is that this is one constant, one long exhale. Yeah. And then it changes and becomes a little more intense and not an exhale. Was hoping I'd play 33 better than that. Rhodesy, so I'm going to be blunt. It doesn't matter if it feels more comfortable to break the octaves. They cannot be broken. Yeah, just don't do that. Where we are building that momentum is on the next page where I'm here now, measure 24. Yeah. And let the crescendo here be really quite great, especially from where we're coming from. And then listen to how the octaves, they're continuing to move by step. And where are they going? Though now the octaves are full of tension. Yeah. Okay. And then when we finish this, oops. Bring the dynamic way down. So that this can be just a little sparkle. Yeah? Okay. Rhodesy, you've got some really awesome bars coming up that you need to learn. We start the first kind of spiral into madness here. Yeah? That's going to be great fun. Oh, and then we get this big explosive arrival. Yeah. Sorry for the sight reading. Yeah, Rhodesy is not, no. I think you'll enjoy it. It's this, these spots are so great. Yeah. All right. Let's give Rhodesy a round of applause. Rhodesy, do you have any questions, follow-up questions about anything that you're doing? You know, both of what we talked about with the Ballade and what we talked about with Julio are similar. We want to connect more deeply with the story, with our story at least, and what the notes mean. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Thanks, Rhodesy. And Jess said, thank you, Julio and Rhodesy. Absolutely. Thank you both. Yeah. Rhodesy, let's see. What bar are you talking about? You said you were told to hold the octaves and cross. Do you have a bar number? Oh, you're talking about back here, huh? Where you broke them? Because of the notation that is marked as a half note for the thumb. My question to you would be, are you taking a separate pedal on the third quarter note and then the sixth quarter note? Or are you doing any partial pedaling there? On your recording, I don't think so, but are you intending to? I wouldn't. Truly. I do think that we want to play the way Chopin wrote, which is play the upper octave with the thumb, and yes, cross to 2. And by doing that, we're also pulling 5 off and creating that kind of almost like portato articulation on 5. But it's going to be caught in the pedal, which means I don't think you should play with a full holding both like that. Especially there. That's incredibly awkward. Think about the bars as written articulation and sustain of a voice. If anything, it would mean a voice the upper note of the octave more. Do crossed with 2, but let the thumb go. Yeah. I hope that helps answer about those couple bars. Okay. Yeah, good stuff. Great. By the way, if anybody else has any questions about the piece or about anything we talked about, just type them in the chat. We've got about 20 minutes or so. And we can keep talking about anything that you all want to talk about. Yeah, Rhodesy, thanks for sending in. Absolutely. My pleasure. Zero, you had a question. You said, how to know if both hands are playing together from a rhythmic point of view without looking at sheet music? Do you mean in your own performance, or do you mean listening to someone else's and trying to play by ear? Or do you just mean, yeah, from memory? So Zero said, in learning a piece, okay. Like generally, okay. I guess, one, if you're learning a piece for the first time, have that recording that you listen to, that you like, maybe the one that inspired you to want to learn the piece in the first place, and get to know the piece by ear. If it's not a sight reading exam, you know, you could do yourself a lot of favors by having your ears learn the piece before your hands start, or at least while they start, so that we aren't just filling our ears with what can sometimes kind of just be plodding around the keyboard while we learn the notes and we learn the rhythms and we learn everywhere we need to be. That is really distracting for us to listen to. And it's definitely not how we want to play in the future, right? So always keep that recording handy and always go back and listen again. And I'd say that could be a great way to understand, without looking at the score, either the rhythm of the hands, and if hands are together, because you're going to understand the nature of the piece purely by ear first, before you even work on playing it or anything like that. Yeah, I think that's my biggest answer, because you said without looking at sheet music. Well, we have to have some reference. If we don't know the piece already, we have to have some reference. Zero, does that answer your question? Let me know. I'm happy to circle back. Great. Restless guitar. No, it doesn't answer your question. Zero, can you try it? Can you ask it in a different way? I'll circle back in a second, okay? Restless guitar, you said, how do you differentiate the holding structure, like the bridge in the hand, from tension? Is the bridge in a loud amount of tension? Yeah, restless guitar. We use that word tension to describe, we use it in a very negative way, right? But what would we be if we had no muscle control at all? Yeah, we would just be kind of a floppy sack of liquid, right? We're blood and a little bit of bone, but yeah, there's a lot of liquid in the body. And without muscle engagement, our body does not really have structure, right? If you just think about what the skeleton looks like, nothing is actually connected, right? Bone to bone. There's space. That space is filled with tissue that moves, could be cartilage, tendons, muscles that move everything, right? So in order to create any structure, in order for you and I, to sit on the bench, we have tension in the body. In order for us to hold our hand over the keyboard, there's tension in the body. In order to do this, there's tension in the body. And I'm doing them all in a pianistically relaxed way. But the point is to show that everything that we do sitting here, every action you take throughout the day, there is tension involved because we have to create structure via how the muscles work with the bones. Yeah? So, yes, the bridge is good structure. That's why I try to differentiate when I talk about tension and structure. I try to use those two words because they're great. Tension is usually the bad thing. The tension is where we're holding, using muscles, we're holding something that doesn't need to be held in order to do what we're doing. That could be like, the classic example is the gripping idea, where if the hands are really gripped, we're engaging quite a lot of the muscle here and even up into the upper arm. And we don't need any of that to maintain the bridge, right? The bridge is formed by the muscles of the palm. It's almost like a little retraction of those that keep the bridge engaged and high arch formed. And so when you learn what the bridge truly feels like, when we're playing from this position, it feels relaxed. But it's not actually, because if it was relaxed, we would do like that would happen. Everything would collapse. So it's good tension. So restless guitar, it's often, you say an allowed amount of tension. Yeah, that's good. There's a good amount of contraction of the muscles, of certain muscles. And overdoing it isn't good. For example, if we over-contract the hand, then we just talked, I don't have that camera on today. We just talked about how the hand was, the bridge is formed by kind of, if we allow the muscles in the palm to pull in a little bit. But if you do too much of that, this happens. And there is a tremendous amount of tension in my fingers themselves and in the top of the hand. That's bad, right? So it's the same muscles, but I over-contracted them. I don't need to be able to play like this. I just need support so that when the fingers play, this doesn't collapse here. Restless guitar, let me know if you have a follow-up about that. But you're on the right track. Let's see. I didn't see that MS2606 had a kind of a related comment. I just didn't read it until now. So you say to form the bridge without tension, we need to let the arm weight stand at the tip of the finger. That's true, but I find it kind of confusing to think about it that way. There's also, the terminology is just, it's so, it's not as clear as our best intentions to make it are. Arm weight is another potentially problematic term. I have a good friend online that posts quite often about misuse of arm weight and how even when we play with weight, we actually aren't from a physiological point of view. So everything is in balance because if think about it to an extreme, if you were to play a chord, and let's say the bridge is fine, and we drop with weight, well, we're kind of stuck now. If there is no balance in the mechanism after we've dropped, and we're playing purely with weight, then we have no way. And I totally understand because teachers teach will just transfer the weight to another finger or transfer to another hand position. And maybe that's good, but it's not actually what's happening. And if it works, if the analogy or the metaphor works for you, great, use it. But what happens as we play, even when we are using a dropping motion to play something, there is always balance from another part of the body. And that balance is always in the opposite direction. It's an upward balance, which means, in a sense, even when we play with dropping and we play with arm weight, we are still playing closer to the idea that we're holding the hand in this position that can navigate back and forth, rather than letting the hand drop and then saying, now I'm going to try to let it move after I've dropped. So there are always forces working in opposite directions as we play. So that's why that part about the bridge being formed from arm weight standing at the tip of the finger. I'd be worried if I asked a student to do that, I'd get this kind of look where the wrist is really high because now, well, the fingers are standing. And I don't want that. Yeah. So to counteract that, I think about the bridge naturally being formed in the hand by how the hand is at rest. So if you let your arm hang and dangle and give it a few shakes and let it come to rest, and then you pick it up and you put it on the keys, the bridge is formed. It might not have just that little bit of structure that it needs from a tiny muscle contraction I feel it in the palm. It might not have that, but it's already formed. I don't have to form it by trying to play or stand on a finger or transfer weight through a finger, even if I'm playing here and I'm transferring weight through the finger. Yeah. Okay. Again, we can talk more about that if you want to. Restless guitar. I'll just finish up your comment that you just made, and then I'll go back to Zero's question. You say, do we even want to maintain hand shape in the air, or are we always releasing between octaves and chords? Well, that's the thing. If you do what I just showed you, and you let your hand relax here, and you are always kind of coming back to this shape, we could call that shape neutral. That is relaxed. It is how the hand naturally falls when it's at rest. The hand naturally doesn't curl and it doesn't extend, right? So shake it out and look at what it naturally looks like. And that's why I do this with students, because everybody's natural point is slightly different. And we don't want to fight the natural place your hand relaxes to. I'm not a fan of that. I'm not a fan of creating the bridge in this kind of way where you pull the big knuckles up. That's never worked for me. It hasn't worked for my students. It places a tremendous amount of tension in my hand. I couldn't play much trying to do that. But I can play just about anything, shaking it out and letting my bridge be natural. So then as we're playing, we can stretch for chords. And yeah, when we relax, we go back to, or think about back through, that relaxed position, which is this. Whenever we can. There will be passages we can't do that. Yeah, I hope that makes sense. Yeah, you said even between octaves and chords. Yeah. The general answer is yes. The deep answer is it depends on the passage, and it depends on your technique, and it depends on what you're struggling with right now. So But I do, even in my own practice, if I'm working on an octave passage, I love practicing letting go and returning to neutral. And that's just a B major scale. Even when I play more quickly, the amount that my fingers are returning, it doesn't look like I'm coming all the way back to this position. That's only because when I let go, there's friction on the key top between the key and my finger. But you can see that there's a retraction. So when I'm working on octave passages, I will absolutely start by feeling an expansion and a natural retraction on every single one of them. And then as speed or as the passage kind of dictates, I'll work on a few other things. I'll work on groupings, or I'll work on where is the exact point that I can add more of that relaxation back to neutral, if we don't have time to do it on every note. Okay. Yeah, 0. I think I like that. Like playing basketball, kind of. In fact, most sports, at the moment there's an action in any sport, in any motor activity, the moment of the action in great athletes is quite small usually. And then there's always a follow through, or there's always a release of some kind. Right? We just happen to have motion, movement after movement after movement after movement. But yeah, if you could think about shooting a basketball, you could think about even swinging a baseball bat, playing tennis, soccer, all of them, football for those of you who aren't American. Zayde, you say, is that the same for the Opus 53 octave passage? I like practicing pretty much all octaves in that way. It doesn't matter what piece or what composer. That's something I return to because I really like how it forces me to feel calm and relaxed in the body about every single note across the passage. And I want to instill that right away from the beginning. And I don't want to build up tension because I'm trying to do something in a different way. And perhaps, in the future, let's say we're working on the B major scale again. I might turn it into a longer period of extension before the release, like 3 notes and then 4 notes. But that's after I have felt a release on every single one. And restless guitar, same for Il König. Yep. Hopefully, if you're playing that, you don't need to start all the way from scratch about relaxing each one. But you can start from a point where you're already able to group them together. But gosh, I would still practice this like this. And then it would get grouped into longer groups, and then I would work on shifting the hand around as I play the octave to attempt to find, in a passage that never allows for a full release, to attempt to find ways that I can partially release the hand in different ways so that I'm actually not performing exactly the same motion over and over and over and over and over again for pages on end. But it changes in subtle ways that allow little bits of the mechanism to relax, and then I can re-engage them, and a bar later or something like that. Okay, I wanted to go back to Zero's question because I did not answer it very well. And then we'll see. Let's see. So Zero, you said you can identify when both hands play together by using beats. Yes. Find the shortest note value used. Yes. Count the entire measure accordingly for like 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and so the example, right hand plays on 1, 2, 3, 4 and 4. Left hand plays 1, 2 and 4. Both hands play on 1, 2 and 4. Yes. Zero, I'm not sure what your question is. Everything you said is correct. If you want to try me again, go ahead. You could still do that by ear, Zero, and if you're not looking at the music, you are doing it by ear by counting. So it's in a way it's similar to what I mentioned. And you say, I mean, can you know it only from rhythm? Oh, absolutely yes. In fact, you should know it only from the sound of the rhythm and not from having to count it. You know, the scores are great and they show us a lot of information. And we are fortunate to have time signature, meter, and bar lines and different note durations and all of that. Makes it possible to play this music that was written so long ago and play it accurately. Because we have a method of putting it somewhat close to the original, putting it down on paper. Yeah. I would encourage you as soon as possible, even while you're using the score, before it's truly memorized, get to know the sound of the rhythm of your passages. Because when we have to count a passage, for example, like you just said, when do the hands come together? When are they not playing together? You're using an awful lot of brain processing power to count and to try to line things up with the count, which means the whole time you're doing that, you're probably not listening very attentively to the sounds you're actually making. The brain's not very good at multitasking stuff. So whatever we're focused on, that's where it's all going. And that's where all of the processing is going. So if we want to learn the rhythm of something, you actually kind of have to take a step back from counting it and say, well, can I replay the by feel, or can I clap by feel, or can I tap the rhythm by feel without putting the numbers or the 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 in our mind? Here's an example from the Ballade. I think we know the notes of the Ballade, especially the opening motif, right? I do not know what beat the motif starts on, so that I can't learn it. I'm even turning the music off. But I know it goes da 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 dum, bum, bum. But I don't know what the count is. I know it by feel, and I know it by, I can guess where the count is because of how the phrase works. I know where beat 1 is. Bum ba da 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 1. Right? But the rest, I don't know. I could play it just fine. Yeah, but that's because I'm not focused on counting it. I'm focused on what is the sound of the melody, either by itself, or what is the sound of that rhythm, and then how long are the holds after, and what is the sound of when the left hand comes in. Yeah, but I couldn't tell you what beat it happens on. I couldn't tell you what, without looking at the score. I don't know what beat C natural is on. I don't know what beat of the bar the D's play together on. It would be easy to find out if I looked. But now that I know the piece, that's not important. Yeah? Does that make sense? So, Zero, I would ask you, can you sing or tap the rhythm of something like a bar or two that you're working on? Like what I just did. So instead of trying to figure out, well, maybe both hands line up on beat 4, maybe shift the question to be, when the right hand plays, D, the left hand also plays D. And now it's related to tone instead. And you only then even have to remember the rhythm of one hand. Bjorn, I did see your question. I'll jump there in a second. Restless guitar. What you just said is perfect. He said, I don't actively count, but I always have pulse. Yes. Yeah. 100%. So yeah, that pulse can shift. It could be the main beat, like in 4/4. It could be the quarter note, or it could be the subdivision. In fact, I would go a step deeper to say most really well-trained musicians are simultaneously feeling multiple subdivisions of the beat. But we're not counting them. As soon as you shift to counting 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 or even thinking the count, now you're activating language, which is something totally different than what we're doing with music. So now there's another part of the brain that's engaged, and that's drawing attention, that's drawing power. If you're saying it out loud, you're also now activating muscle movements. There is so much neurology that's happening just because you started to count out loud. Now, I'm not disagreeing that it's important to count out loud. It absolutely is. Right? While we're learning a piece, that could be really great and it can be really helpful. The trouble is, if you never stop counting out loud, you get stuck and you only think 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and likely you're also missing the music that's going by as you play. I've had many students where I'll ask them, oh, you just played 8 bars. What did you think of the 8 bars you played? And they were so engaged with counting or thinking about what finger goes on what note that they'll look at me and they're like, I don't know what I just played. We want to adjust so that doesn't happen, right? So as we're learning the music, we have to let go of certain things. And counting the beats is one. Not to be confused, like you said, with feeling the pulse. You can feel the pulse without counting the beats. And restless guitar, you said, 0. You said you can also tell when both hands are playing together. Yeah. Yeah. 0, I would try to do this by ear. Really, grab a recording of even if you're working on a piece of music with notation. Okay, we'll look at your little the Chopin Prelude here for a second. And Bjorn, I will come back to your question. And MS 2606, I saw your comment. I will try to come back. Okay, 0 said, in the 4th prelude, the first 3 bars, the piece begins with the pickup, and after that the count is 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and... Correct. Okay. Technically it's not, but it works. It's a subdivision of the count. If we're really looking at it, though, it's in cut time, so there's only 2 beats per bar. That is an important interpretive thing. Studying math is easier than music. Well, math, music is logical. Well, it's logic and emotion together. Math is just logic. Okay, so 0, if I don't look at the piece, how do I know where the hands come together? I think that's the note. I know how the piece sounds. I'm not counting 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and... Yeah, I'm playing it kind of by ear. I'm going bum, 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 bum. I'm feeling the pulse, but I don't know what beat. Like, how do I know both together? By the sound of it. If anything, I'm very aware of where beat 1 is of every bar. Because in music, everything pulls back to beat 1. And so I know where, if I know where 1 is, I consistently can feel where is that pull back to the downbeat. That's why it's called the downbeat. But if I counted 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1, especially if I count like that, maybe great if I didn't know the piece and I couldn't, and I had trouble reading what the rhythms were that were on the page. We might do that. We might write it in the score, right? But instantly, when I look at music that way, I completely lose the sense of the phrase. 1 and 2 and, because even what I'm counting doesn't have a phrase. So the left hand becomes plodding, and the right hand doesn't have direction. It just plays here, and then it plays here again. So it's like, you know, we're like, if you're taking a drive somewhere, it's like passing landmarks and saying, oh, when I get to this landmark, I do that. I turn. I turn right at whatever, and I turn left over here. Zero. Here's a question related to that. When you're driving or riding a bike, when you're going somewhere, especially somewhere that you've been before, and let's say you're not using GPS, you're not using a map, you're just going there and you're present. Are you looking at every single landmark that passes you by on the trip? Probably not. You have a sense of how long it's going to take approximately to get from where you are to where you need. Yeah, you said autopilot. Absolutely. So you go on autopilot and you go from one point, from point A to right before point B where you need to make a turn. And then maybe you see something, you're triggered to see something because a certain amount of time has elapsed. You say, oh, like I always turn at, you might not even know the street names anymore. That's a really common thing for everybody. You drive around and you don't know the names of the streets because you don't need to, because you drive there all the time. But you know, based on what the surroundings look like, oh, I turn here. We know where it is. Music is really similar. Do you know how tiring it would be if you were driving and you said, I don't know where I need to turn next. Maybe the turn didn't come for 5 minutes. And you watched every tree go by, and you watched every house, and you watched every business, and you watched every street sign, and every stop sign, and every stoplight, and asked, is this the one? Is this the one? Is this the one? That's kind of like when you count 1 and 2 and 3 and oh, here we go, both hands together. 4 and 1. We know driving would be a horrible experience. Right? So music works the same way. Listen to a recording. Do it by zero, do it by feel. Here's a couple steps for you. If you're working on this prelude, try counting in a couple different ways. Okay, this is just to prime your brain. It's like you're finding your way the first time. You can count the actual beats, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. and 1. And you say, when I get to 4, the hands move together. Great. You could also just purely say, I'm going to count up until the hands move together. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Move. But give yourself 1 or 2 opportunities to do that counting. And then say, okay, I cannot count it out loud anymore. I have to trust that it's here, like where we turn when we drive. Yep. Simultaneously, well, not exactly at the same time, but while you're trying to practice in this way, listen to a recording of someone playing the piece and predict where the next note is going to be in the right hand, for example. The left hand is always steady, it's constant, it's predictable. So say you're hearing a recording. The right hand comes here. And do it along with someone else who's playing it, just for one hand. But don't count. Just listen to the flow of the music. Yeah? Okay. Zero, I hope you give those things a try. I hope that makes sense. And yeah. We have to break out of kind of the box. Yeah. It's one pro for memorizing things, but even if you aren't memorizing stuff and you're reading the score, we have to break out of the distraction. And we have to learn how to see things in a bigger sort of way. And as we, every time you sit down and practice, for all of us, every time you sit down and practice, you're learning. You're learning something. Hopefully it's the good stuff and the right stuff, but you're always learning something. And at a certain point, we have to test ourselves and say, okay, I just spent a lot of time. I was really focused on XYZ, whatever it is in your practice. I really worked hard on it. It's time to trust that it's going to happen. And it's time to check out. I'm not going to think about it anymore. I'm going to move on to something else. It could be the same bars, but it's time to trust that it's still going to happen. And the more you can learn to trust that it's going to be there, and it's probably is, or it's darn close. The more you can learn to trust that, the more we're able to learn how to step back from seeing music as notes and rhythm and move into seeing music as art, really, as painting a picture, as telling a story. Because we can't do any of those other things. We can't tell a story unless we are checked out of thinking about the rhythm and the count. We have to be focused on the meaning. So it's everything we want to pave the way toward that. Okay? Yeah, C Drive said it sounds like practicing triplets against quarter notes. Do I do it by feel and sound? Now, yes. When I was first learning them, no. I used something like the Nice Cup of Tea tool to learn 3 against 2. And I just needed that, and I got it fairly quickly. But I used that one tool. There are lots of different tools out there that you can use. It didn't come it wasn't just natural. There's neuroscience about that. Did you know that the brain, as you listen to music and as you play music, brain waves naturally sync to the pulse of what you're playing? And the more study you've done as a musician, the faster and to a greater degree they sync with what you're playing. It's interesting. There's a like secondary brain wave that is the perfect subdivision of the pulse that you feel. Once again, magnified in well-trained musicians and less so in non-musicians. What isn't there at all naturally in the brain is a division of 3 against your pulse. That's part of the reason why 3 against 2 is so incredibly hard for people to learn. It's not something, the brain naturally feels pulse. We do lots of things across the day with pulse. You walk with pulse, you run with pulse. You probably, when you prepare food, there's pulse. Your heart beats, of course, with pulse, and it's steady. It doesn't rapidly change, or if it does, you're hopefully having it looked at. Right? So we are surrounded by consistent pulse and lots and lots and lots of things that we do. So music, the basic rhythms of music, like quarters and eighths, and followed by sixteenths, those are naturally easier to get, especially by feel. Triplets take more work. Zayday, I like what you said. You said the more you count, the more you will lose. Yes. Listen to some great recordings. Yeah, I agree with that. And Restless Guitar, you say when you really have learned a particular rhythm, you can later feel it if you want to play it correctly or not. That's absolutely true. And that goes back to what I said, that we have to learn to let go and play it by feel and not by actively thinking about what it is. The active thinking occurs when we're first learning it, and then we have to make a decision to shift our thinking and not stay there. Quickly, going back to Bjorn, you had a question about the level of Passacaglia. If it's the arrangement out there that a lot of people play, I can't remember who did the arrangement. But the one I'm thinking of, I would say, is RCM level, like 5 or 6, probably. Played at a faster speed, maybe 7. But the hardest part is navigating some of the bigger leaps in the hand. Yeah, C drive, Halverson. That's the one, I think. Bjorn, there isn't an original arrangement because I believe Passacaglia was for strings. It wasn't for a keyboard instrument. Zayday says horrible arrangement. You know, that's fine. I've got some students that like playing it, so you know, it's good. It's fine. Oh goodness, Restless Guitar. I'm not familiar with that one, the Bach. Okay. Yeah, Julio, you say when an experienced musician reads music, they don't see notes, they see phrases. In fact, we'll take that a step further. I agree with that. I've said that before. But also, when an experienced musician sees music, they hear music. They don't see dots on a page, and they don't see rhythm and counting. They hear in their mind what it sounds like. So, the place we all want to get to, yeah. Okay. I've got to run, everybody. It's been a great session. Big thanks to Julio and to Rhodesy for sending in some videos. Thanks to both of you. Great work, and keep it up. Okay. And hey, I already have a submission for the next stream. It's going to be some lovely Rachmaninoff, so come back and tune in for that. The Rachmaninoff Elegy we're going to hear, played by Vienna, who's not here today, but she's been on the streams here in the past a number of times. So that's coming up next, and it'll be in 2 weeks on the 26th of August. Hey, Cynthia. I'm glad you're here. It's good to see you. Okay, everybody. Yeah. Enjoy music. Learn to check out from your counting and feel and hear what you're playing instead of being so detailed about every single little thing on the page. All right, Rob, thanks for sticking around the whole time. Absolutely. Bjorn, take care. Everybody else, take care. Thanks for being here. Thanks for sticking around. Faze, hey, Vienna, I just talked about you. We're going to hear Vienna play in 2 weeks. All right. If you haven't given the stream a thumbs up, please do it if you could. And I'll see you on the channel or in the next stream. Have a great rest of your day, everybody. Bye-bye.